Welcome back to Dark Horror Stories. In today's episode, I'm sharing 7 disturbing stories from Nevada motels, places where travelers thought they'd find rest, but found something else entirely. These are tales of people who checked in for the night and encountered things that defy explanation. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Story 1. The Starlight Motor Lodge sat about 40 miles outside of Tonopah, right where Highway 95 cuts through absolute nothingness. I mean, you could drive for an hour in either direction and see maybe 3 buildings total. It was one of those old 1950s places with the turquoise trim and the neon sign that only half worked. Just the tar and ODGE lit up, flickering against the desert sky. I ended up there in late September, maybe 4 years ago now. I'd been driving from Reno to Las Vegas for my sister's wedding, and I'd stupidly decided to take the scenic route because I wanted to see the old mining towns. By the time I realized how remote it actually was out there, the sun was setting and I was exhausted. My eyes kept doing that thing where they'd lose focus on the road. The Starlight was the first place I'd seen in probably 90 miles. The vacancy sign was on, which felt like a small miracle. I pulled into the gravel lot. There were only 2 other cars there, both looking like they hadn't moved in days, covered in that fine desert dust that gets on everything. The office had this yellow light coming through the window that made everything look sickly. The guy at the desk was maybe 70, with liver spots across his bald head and reading glasses on a chain. He didn't look up when I walked in, just kept doing a crossword puzzle with a chewed-up pencil. I waited a few seconds before clearing my throat. "Need a room," I said. $50, cash only. He still hadn't looked at me. I paid and he slid a key across the counter, an actual metal key attached to a diamond-shaped plastic tag with 7 printed on it. Not a key card, an honest-to-God key. "Check out S at 10, he said. "Don't use the phone in the room, it doesn't work." I thought that was an odd thing to specify, but I was too tired to care. Room 7 was at the far end of the building, past an ice machine that hummed louder than it should, and a vending machine that had been unplugged. The door stuck when I tried to open it, like the frame had swollen, and I had to really shoulder into it. Inside, it was exactly what you'd expect. Floral bedspread that had probably been there since the 80s, wood paneling on the walls, a painting of a desert landscape that was hung slightly crooked. The air smelled like old cigarettes and industrial cleaner, that specific motel smell that's the same everywhere. There was a rotary phone on the nightstand, black and heavy looking. I remembered what the old man had said about it not working. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and went to take a shower. The water pressure was terrible and the temperature fluctuated wildly, but I didn't care. I just wanted to sleep. It was probably around 11 when I finally got into bed. I'd been lying there for maybe 20 minutes, starting to drift off when the phone rang. The sound was so loud and jarring in the quiet room that I actually yelped. My heart was hammering as I stared at the phone, watching it ring. The sound was that old-fashioned metallic bell ring, not like modern phones. After 4 rings, it stopped. I tried to tell myself it was probably just a mistake, maybe the front desk calling the wrong room, even though the old man had specifically said the phone didn't work. I was just getting my breathing back to normal when it rang again. This time I picked it up, annoyed now more than startled. Hello. Static, just static, but underneath it something else. A rhythmic sound, almost like breathing, but not quite. Too wet, too deliberate. Hello, I said again, louder. The static cut out abruptly and a voice came through. A woman's voice, distant and hollow. Room 7, she said. Yes, this is room 7, I replied, confused. Who is this? Get out of room 7. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, my mouth suddenly dry. The rational part of my brain was trying to make sense of it. Prank call, maybe. But who would prank call a random motel room in the middle of nowhere? And how if the phone didn't work? I hung up and got out of bed, went to the window and pulled the curtain back slightly. The parking lot was empty and dark. The office light was off now. Both of those other cars were still there, but I couldn't see any lights on in any of the other rooms. I told myself I was being ridiculous and got back into bed. I even managed to start dozing off again. The phone rang a third time at 2:47 a.m. I know because I looked at my phone, my cell phone, to check the time before answering. What? I said, not bothering to hide my irritation. That same wet breathing sound, louder now. And then the voice again, but this time it sounded closer, more urgent. She's coming to room 7. You need to leave room 7. Who's coming? Who is this? She walks the halls after midnight. She's looking. She's almost there. I could hear something in the background of the call now. Footsteps. Slow, shuffling footsteps, and they were getting louder. The line didn't go dead this time. The call just stayed connected, and I could hear those footsteps continuing, getting closer to the phone on the other end. And then I heard something that made every hair on my body stand up. The footsteps were coming from both ends of the call. I could hear them through the phone, but I could also hear them outside my door, in the hallway. The same slow, shuffling rhythm. I dropped the phone and it clattered against the nightstand. The footsteps outside stopped right at my door. I was frozen in the bed, staring at the door, at the gap underneath where the light from outside would show through. There was no light. Something was standing there, blocking it completely. The door handle started to turn, slowly, testing. The door rattled in its frame, that same sticking I'd experienced when I'd opened it. Something was trying to force it open from the outside. I don't know what made me move, but suddenly I was out of bed, grabbing my keys and bag, shoving my feet into my shoes without tying them. The door handle was still turning, jiggling. Whatever was out there was being patient with it. The bathroom window. I don't know why I thought of it, but I did. I ran into the bathroom and climbed onto the toilet, shoving the small window open. It was tiny, barely big enough, but I was scared enough that I didn't care. I squeezed through, scraping my ribs on the frame, and dropped onto the gravel outside. Behind me, I heard the room door finally give way, heard it bang open. I ran to my car in my unlaced shoes, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my keys twice. I didn't look back at the room. I didn't want to see what had gotten inside. I just started the engine and drove, spraying gravel, the undercarriage scraping as I pulled onto the highway too fast. I drove for 2 hours straight before I felt safe enough to stop at a gas station. It was only then that I realized I'd left my phone charging in room 7. I'd grabbed my bag, my keys, but not my phone. I bought a gas station phone card and called my sister from a payphone to tell her I'd be late. While I was standing there, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There was a smudge on my forearm, a long streak of something dark and rust-colored. When I looked closer at my shirt, there were fingerprints. 4 long, thin fingerprints on my shoulder, like someone had grabbed me from behind while I was climbing through that window. But there hadn't been anyone behind me. I would have known. I would have felt it. I scrubbed my arm raw in that gas station bathroom, but I can still see the marks sometimes when the light hits my skin a certain way. And I never drive Highway 95 anymore. I take the long way around, even if it adds 3 hours to the trip. Story 2. My uncle left me a motel when he died. The Desert Rose Inn, just outside of Ely, right on the edge of where the Great Basin starts to sprawl into emptiness. I'd never even been there before. Uncle Vernon and I weren't close. He was my father's brother, and they'd had some falling out before I was born that nobody ever explained to me. But apparently I was his only living relative, so when he passed, I got a call from a lawyer telling me I now owned a 12-room motel in Nevada. I was between jobs at the time, living in Portland and running out of savings, so I figured why not drive down and at least see what I was dealing with. Maybe I could sell it, make enough to keep myself afloat for a while longer. It was late October when I made the drive, and the weather had already turned cold at night. The Desert Rose sat by itself on a frontage road, one of those places that probably did decent business back when people drove more and flew less. The sign out front was sun-faded, the paint peeling, but the building itself seemed structurally sound, long and low, with units facing the parking lot and a separate office building. Vernon's lawyer had sent me the keys and alarm codes. The place had been closed for about 3 months since Vernon went into hospice. I let myself into the office and found everything covered in a thin layer of dust. There was a registration desk, a back office with filing cabinets and an old computer, and Vernon's living quarters, a small apartment behind the office where he'd apparently lived alone for the last 20 years. The apartment felt intrusive to go through, like I was trespassing on someone's private life. There were frozen dinners in the freezer, coffee cups in the sink, a TV guide from August. It felt wrong that everything had just stopped, frozen in time like a photograph. I'd planned to just do a quick walkthrough of the rooms and head back to town for the night. There was a Best Western about 15 miles back where I'd already checked in. But as I was going through the office desk, trying to make sense of Vernon's filing system, it got dark outside faster than I expected. Desert darkness is different than city darkness. It's complete, total. I decided I might as well stay in one of the rooms for the night, save the money, get a better sense of what I was working with. I grabbed a key to room 4. I don't know why I picked that one specifically. It was just in the middle and headed across the parking lot. The room was dated but clean. Vernon must have maintained the place well even as business dried up. There was a queen bed with a southwestern patterned comforter, a small table with 2 chairs, a TV that was probably 20 years old. I'd brought a sleeping bag and some snacks, figuring the power might be off, but when I flipped the switch the lights came on. Apparently Vernon had kept everything running even after he closed. I heated up a cup of ramen in the microwave and was eating it while scrolling through my phone when I heard a door slam. It was loud enough that it made me jump, hot ramen sloshing onto my hand. I waited, listening. The Desert Rose was the only building out here. There were no other cars in the lot. No one else had any reason to be here. Maybe it was just the wind, I told myself. Old buildings make sounds, but there wasn't any wind. The night was still, the kind of still that feels heavy. I got up and looked out the window, peering across the parking lot. All the other room doors were closed, nothing moving. I was about to sit back down when I saw it. The door to room 9 was standing wide open. I was certain it had been closed when I'd walked past it earlier. I should have just locked my door and ignored it. That would have been the smart thing. But I was thinking about property liability, about someone maybe squatting in one of the rooms, about needing to secure the building. I grabbed the master key ring from where I'd left it on the table and headed outside. The temperature had dropped significantly. I could see my breath. My footsteps sounded too loud on the concrete walkway as I approached room 9. "Hello," I called out when I was still a few feet away. "Someone in there?" No answer. The door was open about 2 feet and I couldn't see anything inside except darkness. The light switches were just inside the door on the left. I'd noticed that was consistent in all the rooms. I reached around the doorframe and flipped the switch. The room was empty, completely empty. Same layout as mine: bed, table, TV, bathroom visible through an open door on the right. Everything normal, except the air felt raw. It was colder in here than it should be, and there was a smell, faint but distinct. Something sweet and rotten at the same time, like flowers left in water too long. I was about to back out and just lock it from the outside when I noticed the bathroom light was on. I hadn't turned that on, just the main room light. "Hello," I said again, my voice not as steady this time. I made myself walk to the bathroom doorway. The light was harsh, fluorescent, reflecting off white tile. The mirror above the sink was fogged up, completely covered in condensation, like someone had just taken a hot shower. But the room was ice cold. My breath was still visible. Something was written in the fog on the mirror. Just 2 words, written in shaky letters with what looked like a finger. "Help me." I backed away fast, nearly tripping over my own feet. I was in the doorway when I heard it, a sound from inside the bathroom. A soft dripping sound, steady, rhythmic. I looked back. Water was dripping from the shower head, even though the faucet handles weren't turned. Each drop hit the tile floor with a clear, distinct sound. The water pooled, dark and viscous, not like water at all. It was spreading across the floor toward the drain, but moving too slowly, too thick. And then the smell hit me, stronger now. That sweet rot, but worse. Much worse. It was overwhelming, making my eyes water. I ran. I didn't close the door, didn't lock it, just ran back to room 4 and slammed the door behind me, throwing the deadbolt and chain. My hands were shaking. That ramen I'd eaten was threatening to come back up. I tried to rationalize it. Old plumbing, leaky fixtures. Someone had been there recently, maybe squatters like I'd thought, and they'd written on the mirror as a joke or a prank. The water was probably just rusty. Old pipes do that. But I didn't believe any of it. I sat on the bed with all the lights on, trying to decide what to do. It was past 10 now. I could drive back to town, but the thought of walking across that dark parking lot to my car, passing room 9 with its open door, made my stomach clench. I decided to wait until morning. Around midnight, I heard footsteps outside, slow and deliberate, moving along the walkway. They passed my door, continued down toward the end units, then came back. They stopped right outside room 4. I was staring at the door, holding my breath, when I heard the handle rattle. Someone was trying to open it. The deadbolt held in the chain, but the handle kept turning back and forth, persistent. Then the knocking started, soft at first, almost polite. Tap, 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 like someone asking permission to enter. "Go away," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. The knocking got louder, more insistent, and then a voice came through the door, thin and reedy. "Let me in, please let me in, I'm so cold." It sounded like an old man, weak, desperate. "The office is closed," I said, trying to sound firm. "You need to leave. Please, I just need to get warm. Just for a minute, please." The voice was right against the door now, like whoever it was had their mouth pressed to the gap by the frame. I said, "Leave, or I'm calling the police." The knocking stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was somehow worse. I waited, listening for footsteps walking away, but I didn't hear anything. No sound at all. I don't know how long I stood there before I finally worked up the courage to look through the peephole. There was a face pressed against it from the outside. A face so close I could see the individual pores of the skin, the burst blood vessels in the yellowed whites of the eyes. An old man's face, lips pulled back from brown teeth, staring directly into the peephole as if he could see me through it. I stumbled backward and fell onto the bed. When I looked again a few seconds later, the face was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with my back against the headboard, watching the door, listening for any sound. Around 5 a.m., the sky started to light, that pre-dawn gray that meant morning was coming. As soon as there was enough light, I grabbed my stuff and left. I walked quickly to my car, not letting myself look at room 9, and drove straight back to Portland. I didn't stop, didn't even slow down until I was out of Nevada completely. I sold the Desert Rose, and 3 weeks later to a developer who wanted to tear it down and build something new. Took the first offer I got, which was probably way less than it was worth, but I didn't care. The lawyer handling it asked if I wanted to go back to collect some of Vernon's personal items, and I told him to throw everything away. I never wanted to see that place again. The nightmares lasted for about 6 months. Always the same, standing in room 4 hearing that voice outside. "Let me in. I'm so cold." And when I'd look through the peephole, it wouldn't be an old man's face anymore. It would be Vernon, eyes pleading, mouth moving with words I couldn't hear. The developer called me about 2 months after the sale. He said they'd started demolition and found something strange in the crawl space under room 9. He wouldn't tell me what it was, just said the police were involved now, and did I know anything about Vernon's history at the property. I told him I didn't, and changed my number the next day. Story 3. The Trails End Motel wasn't even the kind of place I'd normally stop. I'm usually a Holiday Inn Express kind of person. Clean, predictable, free breakfast. But I'd been driving for 13 hours straight, trying to get from Sacramento to Denver in 2 days, and I'd underestimated how empty Nevada gets once you're off the interstate. It was a little past 1 in the morning when I started seeing the signs. Old wooden signs, hand-painted, saying Motel 5 MILES and Trails End next exit. The exit wasn't even marked on my GPS, just one of those old 2-lane roads that probably connected small towns before the highway system was built. I was so tired my eyes were burning. I'd already pulled over twice to splash water on my face, and I knew I was getting to that dangerous point where you start micro-sleeping without realizing it. When I saw the next sign, Trails End 1 mile vacancy, I decided to just take it. I'd lose time, but better than driving off the road. The motel appeared suddenly after a curve in the road, lit up by a single street lamp and its own flickering neon sign. It was small, maybe 8 or 9 rooms in a single building, with a separate office that looked like it might have been a house once. There were no other cars in the lot, which should have seemed strange, but honestly just made me relieved I wouldn't have to deal with noise from neighbors. The office door had a bell that jangled when I pushed it open. Inside was overheated, stuffy, with dark wood paneling and old photographs on the walls, black and white pictures of what looked like mining operations, men in dirty clothes standing in front of tunnels. A woman came out from a back room, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She was maybe 60, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and a floral dress that looked homemade. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Didn't think we'd get anyone this late," she said. "You look exhausted, honey." "Long drive," I said. "You have a room available?" "Got all of them available." That smile again, brief and hollow. $60 and I'll need to see your ID. I gave her my driver's license and paid cash. The credit card machine on the counter had a handwritten broken sign taped to it. She wrote everything down in a ledger, actual paper, then handed me a key. "Room 3, right in the middle. Checkout S at 11, but take your time. Breakfast is at 7 if you want it in the office here. Just coffee and toast, nothing fancy." I thanked her and headed to the room. The key stuck in the lock a bit, but the door opened smoothly once I got it turned. Inside was what I expected, dated but not filthy, with a bed that sagged in the middle, a dresser with a TV on it, industrial carpet with a pattern of interlocking brown and orange diamonds. The kind of room that existed in every small-town motel across America. I barely managed to brush my teeth and change into sleep clothes before I fell into bed. I remember thinking the pillow smelled a little musty, like it had been in storage, but I was too tired to care. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but it was still dark. Completely dark. The digital clock on the nightstand wasn't working, and no light was coming through the curtains. I'd left them slightly open to let morning light wake me up, but now they were drawn completely closed. That's what woke me up, I think. Some part of my brain registering that something had changed in the room. I lay there in the darkness trying to orient myself when I heard it. Breathing. Slow, steady breathing that wasn't coming from me. My first thought was that someone had broken into the room and my heart started slamming against my ribs. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand. I'd plugged it in before falling asleep. But when I found the spot where I'd left it, there was nothing there. The cord was still plugged into the wall, but my phone was gone. "Hello," I said into the darkness, my voice cracking. The breathing paused, just for a second, like whoever it was had heard me and was listening. Then it continued, and I realized it wasn't coming from across the room like I'd thought. It was coming from right next to the bed, right next to my head. I rolled away so fast I almost fell off the far side of the bed, tangling myself in the sheets. I scrambled backward until I hit the wall, trying to see anything in the complete darkness, but I couldn't even make out shapes. It was like being blind. "Who's there?" I tried to sound demanding, but it came out as a whimper. Silence now. No breathing at all. The room was utterly quiet, that dead quiet that feels like pressure against your ears. And then something touched my foot. I screamed. Actually screamed, loud and raw, and kicked out at the same time. My foot connected with something solid, something that felt wrong, too cold, too yielding, like hitting a leather bag full of sand. Whatever it was made no sound when I kicked it. I stumbled toward where I thought the door was, hands outstretched, feeling for the wall. My fingers found the light switch and I flipped it desperately. Nothing happened. The power was out. But in that moment when I'd been fumbling for the switch, my eyes had started to adjust just barely to the darkness. And I'd seen something. A shape, darker than the surrounding blackness, standing between me and the bed. Tall, too tall, with shoulders that were wrong somehow. The proportions weren't right. I gave up on the lights and just ran for where I remembered the door being, slamming into the dresser first, then finding the door handle. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely work the deadbolt and chain, but adrenaline gave me enough coordination to get them undone. I burst out into the night air and immediately ran toward the office. The street lamp was still on and its light felt like salvation. I could see the empty parking lot, the dark windows of the other rooms, my own car parked in front of room 3. The office was dark. I pounded on the door anyway, shouting for the woman who checked me in. No lights came on. No response. I tried the door handle, locked. I cupped my hands and looked through the window, but inside was pitch black. I couldn't see anything. Behind me, the door to room 3 was still standing open. I'd left it wide open when I ran out. As I watched, it slowly started to swing shut, moving smoothly like someone was carefully closing it from inside. It shut with a soft click that I heard clearly in the still night air. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove. I left everything in that room. My suitcase, my toiletries, my phone charger, the few clothes I'd unpacked. None of it mattered. I just drove, fast, back the way I'd come, following the dark 2-lane road until it met the highway. The sun was starting to come up when I finally stopped at a truck stop about 80 miles away. I went inside and bought a terrible cup of coffee and sat in the fluorescent-lit dining area, surrounded by truckers and early morning travelers, until my hands stopped shaking. I reported my phone stolen and got a new one. I never called the Trails End Motel to ask about my things. I checked maps later trying to find the exit I'd taken, but I couldn't locate it. The road should have been there, based on where I was and where I ended up, but according to the map, that stretch of highway had no exits for 40 miles. 3 weeks later, I was unpacking boxes from my move to Denver when I found my phone. My original phone, the one I thought I'd left in room 3. It was at the bottom of my suitcase, wrapped carefully in one of my t-shirts. The suitcase I'd never gone back to retrieve. The phone was dead, but when I charged it and turned it on, there was a single new photo in the camera roll, taken at 2:47 a.m. on the night I'd stayed at the motel. I don't remember taking it. The timestamp was right around when I'd woken up in the dark. The photo was completely black, taken in the darkness of that room without a flash. But if you turned the brightness all the way up and looked closely, you could see something. A pale shape, tall and thin, standing at the foot of the bed. And on the pillow next to where my head would have been, there was a hand. Long, thin fingers splayed out, like someone had been reaching toward my face. I deleted the photo immediately, but sometimes I still see it when I close my eyes. Story 4. I got stranded at the Silver Sands Motel because my transmission gave out. Just completely died while I was driving through Fallon, this little agriculture town in the middle of Nevada's high desert. 1 minute I was cruising along fine, The next minute, the car was making sounds like a blender full of rocks and coasting to a stop on the shoulder. This was July, midday, and it must have been 105 degrees. The mechanic I called, the only mechanic in town who answered, told me it'd be at least 3 days before he could even look at it, maybe a week before he could get the parts. I asked about rental cars and he actually laughed. So I was stuck. The Silver Sands was walking distance from where my car got towed, which was the main reason I chose it. That, and it was cheap, $40 a night, which was about all I could afford since I was already looking at an $800 repair bill minimum. The guy who ran the place was probably 35, which surprised me. I'd expected someone older. He had a shaved head and gauge earrings, and he was watching something on his phone when I came in. He barely looked up. "How long?" he asked. "A week, maybe." "Weekly rate's $250, pay up front." I paid and he gave me a key to room 6. "Vending machines work," he said. "Laundry rooms around back. We're not responsible for belongings left in there." Room 6 was about what I expected for $40 a night. The carpet was stained, the bedspread was thin and sun-faded, and the whole place smelled like smoke even though there was a no smoking sign on the door. But it was air-conditioned, and after standing in that heat, that was all I cared about. The first 2 days were fine. Boring, but fine. I watched TV, walked to a gas station for food, called the mechanic twice for updates he didn't have. I slept okay, despite the truck noise from the highway and the couple arguing in the room next to mine. It was the third night when things got weird. I woke up around 3 in the morning because I was cold. Really cold, which didn't make sense because I'd set the AC to 72 before bed, and it's not like it was that powerful a unit. I reached for the extra blanket at the foot of the bed and realized I could see my breath. The room was freezing. Actual frost was forming on the inside of the window. I got up and checked the AC unit. It wasn't even running. The room was silent except for the hum of the mini fridge. I turned on the lamp and looked at the thermostat. It read 58 degrees. That's when I noticed the bathroom light was on. I turned it off before bed. I was certain of it. I always turned it off because even the little bit of light coming under the door bothered me. I walked to the bathroom and pushed the door open. Everything looked normal at first: toilet, sink, shower with a moldy curtain. But the mirror was covered in condensation again, just like that other time. No, not condensation, ice. A thin layer of ice crystals covered the entire surface, and there was something written in it. Not words this time. A symbol maybe, or a drawing. It looked like a circle with lines radiating out from it, almost like a child's drawing of the sun, but wrong somehow. The lines were too jagged, too many of them, pointing in directions that made my eyes hurt to follow. I reached out to wipe it away, my hand an inch from the glass, when I saw the reflection behind me. Someone was standing in the bathroom doorway. A woman in a white nightgown, dark hair hanging in wet strings around her face. She was dripping. Water pooled around her bare feet, spreading across the tile. I spun around. The doorway was empty. But when I looked back at the mirror, she was still there in the reflection, standing right where I'd seen her, watching me with eyes that were completely black, no whites at all. Her mouth started to open, wider than it should have been able to, and I saw there was something in there, something moving. I ran. Didn't even think about it, just bolted from the bathroom, grabbed my keys from the nightstand and ran for the door. I was outside in the parking lot in my t-shirt and boxers, barefoot on the rough concrete before I even registered what I was doing. The night air was warm, normal temperature. I stood there shaking, staring at the closed door of room 6, trying to catch my breath. Other rooms had their lights on. Room 5, right next to mine, and room 8 at the far end. It was comforting somehow, knowing I wasn't alone. I thought about knocking on one of the doors, asking to use their phone to call who? The police. To say what? I was trying to decide what to do when I noticed something. The curtains in room 5 were open slightly and I could see inside. The room was empty, completely empty. Not just no people, no furniture. No bed, no dresser, nothing, just bare walls and carpet. I walked closer, my feet burning on the hot concrete, and looked in the window properly. Definitely empty. But the lights were on, all of them, like someone was in there. Room 8 was the same. Lights on, curtains partially open, completely empty inside. I looked around the parking lot. There were 4 cars, including mine. The office was dark. Everything was quiet except for the highway noise in the distance. I walked to the office and tried the door locked. I knocked, then pounded, then shouted, but nobody came. Through the window I could see the counter, the computer, everything normal. But no one was there. When I turned around, the door to room 6 was standing open. I'd closed it when I ran out. I was sure of it. Now it was open about 2 feet and I could see the lights inside were off. Everything inside was dark. As I watched, one by one, all the other room lights started going off. Room 5, then room 2, then room 8. Click, click, click. Until the only light in the entire motel complex was the flickering neon sign that said Silver Sands and the single bulb over the office door. I got in my car. Didn't matter that I had no shoes, no wallet, no phone. I got in and started driving. The car made terrible sounds. I'd forgotten the transmission was shot, but it moved, grinding and shuddering, and that was enough. I drove it 2 miles before it died completely in front of a 24-hour diner. The waitress there let me use the phone and gave me coffee while I waited for the police. I told them someone had broken into my room at the Silver Sands, which was sort of true. They drove me back. In the daylight, with 2 cops walking in with me, room 6 looked completely normal. My stuff was all there, untouched. The bathroom mirror was clear. The temperature was fine. The officers looked at me like I was crazy or drunk or both. "You said someone broke in?" one of them asked, looking around the obviously undisturbed room. I thought I saw someone. I was sleeping. I might have been confused. They left after making me promise I wasn't on anything. I packed my stuff and went to the office. The guy with the gauge earrings was there, same as before, watching something on his phone. "I need to check out early," I said. "No refunds on the weekly rate." "I don't care, I'm leaving." He shrugged and didn't look up. I took a bus home, left my car at the mechanic and told him to junk it. I'd sign whatever paperwork remotely. It cost me $400 for a bus ticket, and I arrived with nothing but the clothes I'd been wearing and the backpack I'd grabbed from room 6. When I unpacked the backpack later, I found something I hadn't put in there. A washcloth from the Silver Sands, folded neatly with the motel's logo on it. When I unfolded it, there was something inside. Wet black hair. Long strands of it, knotted together, still damp. I burned it in my kitchen sink and never talked about it to anyone. Story 5. The Constellation Motel got its name from the big mural painted on the side of the building. All the constellations of the northern sky, done in this elaborate 1960s style with golden stars and swirling purple nebulas. You could see it from the highway, this big cosmic painting in the middle of nowhere, about 60 miles north of Wells. I stopped there because I thought it would make a good photograph. I was doing this thing at the time where I drove around the West taking pictures of vintage roadside attractions for a book I was working on. Motels, diners, gas stations, anything with that mid-century character that was vanishing. The Constellation looked perfect, far enough off the beaten path that it hadn't been renovated into something generic but still operational, judging by the open sign. This was April, maybe 6 years ago. Late afternoon with good light. I pulled into the empty lot and spent 20 minutes taking photos of the building from different angles, focusing on that beautiful faded mural and the vintage neon sign. A woman came out of the office while I was shooting, middle-aged, wearing an apron, friendly enough. She asked if I wanted a room, and I figured why not. It was getting late, and the next town was an hour away. Plus, it would give me a chance to photograph the interior, get some of those great vintage room details for the book. "You're the only guest tonight," she said as she was checking me in. Her name tag said Rita. "Most nights, actually. We get someone maybe once or twice a week these days." "How do you stay in business?" I asked, signing the register. She smiled, but it was sad. "My husband and I bought this place in 1988. We're too old to do anything else and too stubborn to give up. Room 8 okay. It's got the best view of the mountains." Room 8 was at the end of the building, past a painted sign that pointed to the pool, which was empty and cracked. The room was exactly what I'd hoped for photographically. Original wood paneling, Atomic-era light fixtures, a painting of a rocket ship on the wall. Everything was dated but clean, maintained with obvious care. I spent an hour before sunset taking detail shots, the rotary phone, the vintage TV guide on the nightstand, the view through the window of the painted mountains and vast desert beyond. This was exactly the kind of character I was trying to capture. It was around 9 when I decided to take some night shots of the exterior, especially the neon sign. I grabbed my camera and headed out. The temperature had dropped significantly. I was wearing a jacket but still felt cold. The sky was completely clear, full of stars, real stars, not just the painted ones on the building. No moon yet. Perfect conditions for long exposure shots. I was setting up my tripod in the parking lot when I noticed lights on in some of the other rooms. Rooms 3, 5, and 11. But there were no other cars in the lot besides mine, and an old pickup I assumed belonged to Rita or her husband. Maybe they keep some lights on for atmosphere, I thought, or for security. I took several shots of the neon sign against the star-filled sky, then moved to get a wider angle that included more of the building. I was looking through my viewfinder, adjusting the composition, when I saw movement in the window of room 5. Someone was standing there looking out, just a silhouette backlit by the room's interior lights. I lowered the camera and looked directly at the window. The silhouette was still there, motionless. After a few seconds, it backed away from the window and disappeared. Other guests must have checked in while I was in my room, I thought, but I hadn't heard any cars. I continued shooting, getting a few more angles, then decided to head back to my room. I was walking past room 5 when I heard something that made me stop. Music. Old music, the kind you'd hear in scratchy recordings from the 40s or 50s. Big band, I think, with lots of brass. It was coming from inside room 5, muffled but clear. And I could hear voices too. People talking, laughing. It sounded like a party. Without really thinking about it, I knocked on the door. I don't know why, maybe some photographer's instinct thinking this might be interesting, maybe just curiosity. The music stopped instantly. The voices cut off mid-sentence. Total silence. "Sorry to bother you," I called through the door. "I'm staying in room 8, just wanted to say hi." No response. Not a sound from inside. I waited awkwardly for a few seconds, then walked away. I felt embarrassed, like I'd committed some social faux pas by knocking. Back in room 8, I uploaded my photos to my laptop and started editing them. I was working on the shot of the neon sign when I noticed something odd. In the background, visible in the upper left corner of the frame, was the window of room 5. And there was someone standing in it. No, not someone. Multiple people. 3 or 4 silhouettes crowded in the window, all facing out toward the parking lot, toward where I'd been standing with my camera. I zoomed in on the image, but the resolution wasn't good enough to make out any details. Just dark shapes backlit by the room's interior lights. I went to the window of my room and looked out. Room 5's lights were still on, but I couldn't see anyone in the window now. The curtains were drawn most of the way. It was past midnight when I tried to sleep. I'd been lying there for maybe an hour, drifting in and out, when I heard it again, that music. The same big band sound, tinny and distant, like it was coming from far away. I got up and went to the window. Multiple rooms had their lights on now. Rooms 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11, all of them glowing warmly in the darkness, and I could see shadows moving behind the curtains, people moving around, shapes passing back and forth. The music was definitely coming from one of the rooms, maybe more than one, and I could hear voices again, that party sound. Laughter, conversation, the clink of glasses. I should call the office, I thought. Tell Rita there's a noise complaint. But even as I thought it, I knew I wouldn't. There was something about the scene that felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. Those lit windows, the vintage music, the moving shadows. It felt like I was looking at something from another time. I watched for a while, maybe 10 minutes, before I saw something that made my skin prickle. A door opened. Room 9, right in the middle of the building. A figure stepped out into the walkway, a woman in a long dress, the kind with the full skirt from the 50s. She stood there for a moment, smoking a cigarette, the ember glowing red in the darkness. Another door opened. Room 7. A man in a suit stepped out, said something to the woman. She laughed. He walked toward her and they stood together talking, too quiet for me to hear the words. More doors opened. Room 3, Room 5, Room 11. People emerging, all dressed in clothes that looked decades out of date. Men in suits and fedoras. Women in dresses and heels. They congregated in the walkway, talking, smoking, laughing. There must have been 15 or 20 people out there, and I hadn't heard a single car arrive. I grabbed my camera without thinking, raised it to take a photo. The moment I looked through the viewfinder, every single person stopped what they were doing and turned to look at me. All of them simultaneously, faces turning toward my window. I couldn't see their features clearly in the darkness, but I could feel them staring. I lowered the camera. They all remained frozen, facing my room. Slowly, deliberately, I closed the curtains. My hands were shaking. I backed away from the window and sat on the bed, trying to rationalize what I'd seen. A convention maybe, a vintage car club meeting, but there were no cars. And why would they all turn to look at me like that, all at the exact same moment? The music continued outside for hours. I lay in bed, wide awake, listening to it. Listening to the voices and laughter that sounded wrong somehow, too far away, like I was hearing them through water or through years of time. Sometime around 4 in the morning, everything went quiet. The music stopped. The voices faded. When I finally worked up the courage to peek through the curtains, all the lights in the other rooms were off. The parking lot was empty and dark. I didn't sleep. As soon as there was enough light in the sky, I packed my stuff and loaded my car. I went to the office to check out. Rita was there, looking tired, bags under her eyes. Leaving already? I hope everything was okay with the room. It was fine, I said, but there was a lot of noise last night. The other guests were pretty loud. She looked confused. Other guests? Honey, you were the only one here last night. You're the only one who's been here all week. I didn't argue with her, I just left. When I got home, I went through all the photos I'd taken that night. In every single shot that showed the motel building, there were people visible in the windows. Silhouettes, shapes, figures pressed against the glass looking out. In the wide shot of the building, you could see faces, pale and indistinct, but definitely faces, staring directly at the camera from multiple rooms. I never published those photos. I never went back to the Constellation Motel. And I gave up on the book project entirely. Sometimes late at night, I still hear that music. Faint, distant, like it's coming from another room in my apartment. But I live alone, and when I go looking for the source, there's never anything there. Story 6. The Cactus Bloom Motor Inn was supposed to be a quick overnight stop on my way to visit my daughter in Phoenix. I'd been driving since 6 that morning from Salt Lake City, and by the time I hit Winnemucca, I was exhausted. My original plan had been to push through to Reno, but my back was killing me, and I was having trouble keeping my eyes focused on the road. The Cactus Bloom was just off the highway, advertised by one of those tall vintage signs with the changeable letter board. Clean rooms $49.99 HBO, it said in plastic letters that had faded to pale pink. I'm 63 years old and I've stayed in more motels than I can count. Business travel, family vacations, road trips. They all blur together after a while. But I remember the Cactus Bloom very clearly. The office was manned by a young man, probably college age, with headphones around his neck and a textbook open on the desk. He processed my check-in efficiently and handed me a key to room 12. Pool's open until 10 if you want to use it, he said. Breakfast starts at 6. Room 12 was at the back of the building, facing away from the highway. It was quiet back there, which I appreciated. The room itself was standard, 2 double beds with floral covers, a small table by the window, a bathroom with a combination shower tub. Everything clean enough, nothing special. I took a shower, ordered a pizza from a place the front desk kid had recommended, and settled in to watch TV. This was March, a Tuesday evening. Nothing about it felt unusual. I fell asleep sometime after 9, the TV still on. What woke me up was the smell, something burning, acrid chemical making my eyes water. I sat up in bed, disoriented, trying to figure out where I was. The room was full of smoke, not thick smoke, but a haze that caught in my throat. Fire alarm, I thought immediately. Get out. I stumbled to the door in my undershirt and pajama pants, fumbling with the chain lock. When I got the door open, I expected to see flames, people evacuating, chaos. The walkway was empty and quiet. No smoke out here at all. Clear night air, stars visible above the parking lot lights. No alarm ringing, no sign of fire. I stood in the doorway, confused, looking back into my room. The smoke was still there, still visible in the lamplight, but it wasn't getting any thicker and I couldn't see any source. No flames, no burning smell anymore. Just that haze hanging in the air. I walked back inside cautiously, checking the bathroom, looking behind furniture, trying to find where it was coming from. Nothing. The smoke just hung there, neither dissipating nor increasing. The TV was still on, but it was showing static. Not like it had lost the channel, just full static, gray and white visual noise with that loud white noise sound. I know I'd been watching a late-night talk show before I fell asleep. I turned it off. The room immediately felt more oppressive in the silence. That's when I heard the knocking. It came from the wall between my room and room 11. 3 knocks, deliberate and measured. Knock, knock, knock. I waited. After a few seconds, 3 more knocks. Same pattern, same spot on the wall. "Hello," I called out, feeling stupid. "You okay over there?" The knocking stopped. For a moment there was nothing, and then I heard it. A voice, muffled by the wall but clear enough to understand. "Help me." A woman's voice, strained, desperate. "Help me please, I can't get out." I didn't hesitate. I threw on my shoes and went straight to the office. The kid with the headphones looked startled when I came in. "There's someone in room 11 who needs help," I said. "She's saying she can't get out." He looked confused. "Room 11, that room's not rented tonight." "I'm telling you, I heard someone calling for help. We need to check on her." To his credit, he didn't argue. He grabbed a master key and followed me back to my room. We went to the door of room 11 and he knocked. "Hotel management, is everyone okay in there?" No response. He knocked again, louder. "I'm going to open the door, okay?" He unlocked it and pushed it open. The room was dark. He felt for the light switch and flipped it on. Empty, completely empty, and not just of people. There was no furniture in the room at all. No beds, no dresser, nothing. Just bare walls, bare carpet, and bare light fixtures. It looked like a room under renovation, stripped down to nothing. "We're remodeling this wing," the kid said, sounding apologetic. "There's nobody in here. Hasn't been anyone in here for weeks." But I heard her, I insisted. She was calling for help, knocking on the wall. He looked uncomfortable. "Maybe from another room. Sound carries weird sometimes in these old buildings." But we both knew that didn't make sense. The voice had come from right there, from directly on the other side of the wall from where I'd been standing. We checked anyway. Walked the whole length of the building, knocked on doors of rooms that were occupied. Nobody had called for help. Nobody had heard anything. Back in room 12, the kid looked around, probably trying to assess if I was having some kind of medical episode. "The smoke," I said. "There was smoke in here when I woke up." "No smoke now, the air was clear." "Do you want me to move you to a different room?" he offered. "No charge." I said yes. He gave me room 3 on the other side of the building, facing the highway. I didn't care about the noise. I just didn't want to be near that empty room anymore. I barely slept the rest of the night. Every time I started to drift off, I'd hear it again in my mind. that voice saying, "I can't get out." In the morning, I checked out early. The same kid was still at the desk, looking like he'd been there all night. Maybe he had. "About last night," he said as I was leaving. "Listen, you're not the first person to report weird stuff in that room. Room 12, I mean. We've had complaints before." "What kind of complaints?" He looked uncomfortable again, glancing around like he was worried someone might overhear. "Noises, voices. Some people said they smelled smoke. One guy said he saw a woman's face in the bathroom mirror, but it wasn't his reflection." "What happened?" I asked. "In that room, I mean, there's a reason for this." "I don't know the whole story," he said. "But something bad happened there like 15 years ago. A woman, that's all I know. Management doesn't talk about it." I left and drove straight through to Phoenix, 12 hours without stopping except for gas. I didn't want to stay in another motel. The whole drive, I kept thinking about that voice. "I can't get out." About a month later, I was curious enough that I did some searching online. Found an old news article from 2007 about the Cactus Bloom Motor Inn. A woman had died there, Emma Torres, 34 years old. She'd locked herself in one of the rooms and started a fire. The article said she'd been trying to escape an abusive situation. The fire had been ruled accidental smoke inhalation, the cause of death. The article didn't specify which room number, but I know. My daughter found a scratch on my back when I got to Phoenix. 3 parallel lines like fingernail scratches running from my shoulder blade to my mid-back. I hadn't felt anything, hadn't bumped into anything that could have caused it. "Mom, did you fall?" she asked. "I don't think so," I said. But the scratches were there, thin and red, still fresh. Like someone had reached out while I was sleeping and marked me. Like someone wanted to make sure I'd remember. Story 7. The Lucky 7 Motel was the kind of place that only still existed because of its location at the intersection of 2 highways outside of Elko. It caught people who didn't want to drive all the way into town, people passing through who just needed a bed for a few hours. I ended up there because of a scheduling mistake. I was working as a wildlife surveyor, doing bat population counts in remote areas, and the hotel I'd booked in Elko gave away my reservation. It was 8 p.m. when I found that out, and I'd been hiking all day. I was filthy, exhausted, and just needed to crash. The Lucky 7 was 10 minutes away and had vacancy. The woman at the front desk had the weariest eyes I've ever seen. She moved slowly, like every action cost her energy she didn't have. "One night?" she asked. "Yeah, you have anything available?" "We've got everything available." She said it with this heavy resignation, like she was used to the place being empty. She gave me room 7. "Only room with a working heater," she explained. "Gets cold at night this time of year." It was early November and she was right about the cold. Even in the office I could see my breath. Room 7 was at the end of the building, separated from the other rooms by an ice machine that looked like it hadn't worked in years. The room was larger than I expected, with 2 queen beds and a sitting area with a torn armchair. Everything looked tired. Worn carpet, faded wallpaper, water stains on the ceiling. But it was warm. The heater under the window rattled loudly but pumped out heat. I took a shower, ate a protein bar from my pack, and was asleep by 9:30. The dream started normally enough. I was back in the forest doing my survey work looking for bat roosts. But the trees were wrong, too close together, their branches interlocking overhead until no sky was visible. And it was cold, so cold I could see frost forming on the bark. Someone was calling my name. A child's voice, distant, coming from deeper in the woods. "Maggie, Maggie, help me." I started walking toward the voice, pushing through underbrush that caught at my clothes. The voice kept calling, always ahead of me, always just out of sight. "Maggie, I'm cold. I can't find my way." "Where are you?" I called back. "Keep talking, I'll find you." The trees opened suddenly into a clearing and there was a building. The Lucky 7 Motel standing in the middle of the forest, impossible and wrong. The door to room 7 was open, yellow light spilling out. "I'm in here," the child's voice called from inside. "I've been waiting for you." I walked toward the door, some part of me knowing this was wrong, knowing I should turn back but unable to stop. The room beyond the doorway was dark despite the light I'd seen, and when I stepped through I was falling into nothing. I woke up gasping, twisted in the sheets, my heart racing. The room was dark. I'd left the bathroom light on when I went to sleep. I always do in motels, but now it was off. The only light came from the digital clock on the nightstand, 3:33 a.m., and someone was in the room with me. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them breathing. Slow, wet breaths like someone breathing through fluid. The sound was coming from the sitting area, from the direction of that torn armchair. Every instinct told me not to look. Don't turn on the light, don't acknowledge it, just lie still and wait for morning. But I couldn't help it. I reached for the lamp on the nightstand, my hand shaking. The bulb was gone. I could feel the empty socket where it should have been. "Don't," a voice said from the darkness. A child's voice, the same one from my dream. "Don't look at me, please." I froze, my hand still on the lamp. "I didn't mean to," the voice continued. Small, scared, desperate. "I was just so cold, I didn't mean to stay." "Who are you?" I managed to whisper. "I don't remember anymore. I've been here so long. It's so cold, Maggie." "How do you know my name?" "I know all their names. Everyone who stays in this room. I try to tell them, try to warn them, but they never listen. They never help." I could hear movement now, something shifting in the chair, fabric rustling. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want to leave. I want to stop being cold, but I can't remember how." The voice was crying now, thick with tears. "Can you help me remember? Can you help me leave?" Every fiber of my being was screaming at me to run, to get out of the room. But there was something in that voice, something so genuinely lost and afraid that I felt my fear shift into something else. Pity maybe, or responsibility. "How?" I asked. "How do I help you?" "Look at me, really look at me, see what happened, then you'll know." Against every survival instinct I had, I reached for my phone. It was charging on the nightstand. I unlocked it, the screen brightness painful after the darkness, and turned on the flashlight. I pointed it at the armchair. A little girl sat there. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. She was wearing a nightgown that might have been white once but was now gray and tattered. Her skin was blue, tinged with frost. Her lips were purple. Her eyes were closed. "Look closer," she whispered without moving her lips. "See what happened to me." I stepped closer, the phone light shaking in my hand. As I got nearer, I could see details that made no sense. Her skin wasn't just blue, it was translucent in places like ice. I could see the shape of the chair through her body, and then I saw the marks. Around her wrists, around her ankles. Ligature marks, deep and dark. "The man who brought me here," she said, eyes still closed, "he was my mother's friend. He said we were going on an adventure. He brought me to this room and She didn't finish, didn't need to. "They never found me," she continued. "My mother looked and looked. Everyone looked, but they never found me. He put me somewhere dark and cold, and I've been cold ever since. So cold, Maggie. Even after I stopped being me, I stayed cold." "What's your name?" I asked, tears running down my face now. "Lucy Henshaw. I was 7 3/4. That's what I always said, 3/4. The smallest hint of a smile on those blue lips. "I had a dog named Charlie. I liked grape popsicles. I was scared of bees." She opened her eyes finally, and they were just empty sockets, dark and hollow. "Will you remember me, Maggie? Will you tell someone I was here? So my mother knows I didn't just disappear. So she knows it wasn't her fault for letting me go with him." "Yes," I said. "I'll tell someone, I promise." She smiled then, really smiled, and for just a second she looked like a normal little girl. Solid, real, alive. "Thank you," she whispered. "I've been waiting so long for someone to listen." The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, dramatically. My breath came out in great clouds of fog. Ice formed on the windows, spreading in fractal patterns. And Lucy, the thing that looked like Lucy, began to fade, becoming more translucent, more like ice and less like a child. "The heater," she said, voice growing distant. "He took it apart. Look in the heater." And then she was gone, just gone. The armchair was empty. The temperature returned to normal so quickly I wondered if I'd imagined the cold. But the ice on the windows was still there, slowly melting, water running down the glass in rivulets. I turned on every light in the room. They all worked now, including the lamp with the bulb that had been missing. I went to the heater under the window, the one that had been rattling and working so well. It was screwed into the wall, but the screws were loose. I used a coin from my pocket to remove them. The heater cover came off, revealing the heating elements and behind them a space in the wall. I could see something in there. Something wrapped in plastic, shoved into the wall cavity behind the heater. I called the police at 4:15 a.m. They found her remains exactly where I said they would. Lucy Henshaw, missing since 1986. 37 years she'd been in that wall in that room, while people slept 5 feet away from her. The man who'd taken her, Donald Pritchard, had died in 1994. He'd worked at the Lucky 7 as maintenance. He'd had access to all the rooms. They found others too after they started looking. In the walls, under floors, in the crawl space beneath the building. The Lucky 7 Motel had been a hunting ground for years and nobody had known. Lucy's mother was still alive. 71 years old, living in a care facility in Reno. The police said when they told her, she just nodded. "I knew she was calling me," she said. "I could hear her sometimes in my dreams. Calling for help. I knew she wanted to come home." They demolished the Lucky 7 6 months later. I was there the day they started tearing it down, standing in the parking lot with a few reporters and some of the victims' families. Right before the excavator's arm swung into room 7, I saw something, just for a second. A little girl standing in the window, her hand raised in a wave. She was smiling. And then she was gone. I like to think she finally got warm. I like to think she finally got to leave. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear that voice in my dreams. I've been waiting so long for someone to listen. And I wonder how many others are still waiting. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments which story unsettled you most, and share this with your friends who love a good scare. Until next time, stay safe out there.